even after the longest mailbag in the history of the podcast daily, there were still more questions to get to. So it's going to be a mailbag Monday on the podcast daily with Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and me, Austin Ward. Bill, you got more questions for us? That thing was bursting.
I do have more questions. To be fair, I don't know that Friday's mailbag featured the most questions we've answered, but it certainly featured the most talking that we've done on a podcast daily. So yeah, we do have more questions, and these are all Ohio State football related questions because Friday's for getting freaky and Monday is not. So these are all very serious Ohio State football questions.
But down to business on a Monday.
But what if I ask you guys, what's the greatest sequel of all time? Like movie wise, what's the
Terminator 2?
Because obviously there's high expectations for this episode, and I want to be clear: are we in Godfather 2 range? Are we in Empire Strikes Back range? Are we in Terminator 2 range? What do we have to get to what bar do we have to clear to be the greatest sequel ever made?
Tokyo Drift.
All right, that's the end of the show.
Well, that's not technically a sequel. That's the third entry in the greatest cinematic franchise of all time.
Oh, I thought it was the second film.
No, that would be Too Fast, Too Furious.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry.
My apologies to the Fast trilogy historian on the show.
The Fast heads. I don't know if there's an actual name for us sickos who love Fast and Furious more than anything else. Fasties. I don't know what it is, Berm. What is the greatest sequel of all time?
I don't know. I mean, opinions may vary. I just was wondering if you guys had your opinion. I think Terminator 2 is probably up there. I think the ones I listed are all widely. I believe The Godfather Part 2 is regarded as probably like the greatest sequel in cinema history, but I've never seen it, so I don't know. I've never seen any of the Godfather movies, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get to the show.
I've also never seen any of the Godfather movies, so maybe we can watch them together sometime.
All
right.
Yeah, well, Austin's playing with Wyoming on NCAA football next week when we're in Indianapolis. We can watch The Godfather.
That's great. I'll get like 9 hours to play by myself.
Sounds like a great night, honestly. Okay. As I said, all football questions. The first two are about Will Howard. So this one is from Jack. Doug sent a text from Big 12 Media Days to our tech subscribers last week because he was talking to some Kansas State people. And I believe this was the Kansas State. He said it was Kansas State's version of Jim Lachey, so like their radio kind of color analyst guy. Had some very high praise for Will Howard, including saying the name Peyton Manning and comparing or finding comparisons for Will Howard. I think it was more about like the way Will Howard can like lead a team than it was like Will Howard is Peyton Manning. But regardless, he did say the name Peyton Manning. So here's the question. Jack says, Doug sent a thing about how Kansas State people think Will Howard was awesome. Peyton Manning was even referenced. How much do you believe that? What does that say about the current quarterback competition if he is better than we expect, including what that might say about Devin Brown and how he has evolved if it's actually close? And if this is true, will Ohio State start selling tickets to the national championship parade now or wait until later?
I think those tickets were free, so they can post them whenever they want. I do think that there are intangibles with both Will Howard and Devin Brown. I think that separate them a little bit from the way Kyle McCord led. Now, Will Howard has only had 6 months of that, and I don't know that we saw a great deal of it throughout March and April as he was getting his feet under him. We already knew that existed with Devin Brown, and we saw and heard a ton of that in December throughout winter workouts. I think it's got to be encouraging for Ohio State fans to hear that about Kansas State's view from Will Howard. But I think we've also seen after spring ball with some of the way that Will Howard has interacted with teammates. When we had an opportunity to have him in for Buck 9 at Fairway Columbus, seeing him working out with the Emeka Egbuka. I think we talked about that during June, during camp season. All those things, I think you could tell that there were leadership qualities for him, but he maybe hadn't had an opportunity in March and April to fully unleash that in the locker room yet. He wanted to earn that respect. I think he's probably done that now. What does that mean for like his ability on the field? I'm not sure, but I think that both Howard and Brown are going to bring a lot more fire to that position than maybe Kyle McCord did.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, do I believe it? Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I think that Kansas State fans should look back on Will Howard's time there pretty favorably. He helped win a Big 12 championship for them. I mean, that's doesn't happen every year in Manhattan. He was going to probably not be the starter this year because Avery Johnson is a kid from Kansas who they really, really like. And it's college football in the year 2024. You have to make sure that if you're Kansas State, you're building around a kid from Kansas and maybe not a kid from Pennsylvania. If they're close and athletically, Will Howard is a little bit different than Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson might be a little bit better of an athlete. I don't know, passing wise, we haven't seen a whole lot to differentiate them. But if you look at those guys and you think, okay, they're somewhat the same, and one's from down the road and one's from Pennsylvania, I think you have to build with the guy from Kansas. You're trying to prove yourself as Kansas's football team, which has been harder in the last couple of years because of what the Jayhawks are doing. So, like, I don't think there's like any fake goodwill being no pun intended, like given to Will Howard because you don't have to. They could have just said, hey, he had a good career, we're moving on. They don't have to shower him with praise.
I'm trying to find so here I want to listen. If you subscribe to be a texter, this is the kind of stuff you can get, but I'll give people who aren't texters a little taste of what exactly Doug said. So he talked to a guy named Stan Weber, who's the radio analyst, as I said, former Kansas State quarterback, got to know the quarterbacks well. He's a big fan of Will Howard and dropped the name Peyton Manning when talking about how he thinks Howard could lead the Ohio State offense and get the ball to playmakers. He also said that Howard did a great job of handling his business in 2022 when he expected to start, and Nebraska transfer Adrian Martinez took the job before getting hurt halfway through the year, and Howard took over and then obviously won the Big 12 championship that year for Kansas State. So, like, I think they do like him. I saw some stuff on Twitter last week coming off of Big 12 Media Day from Kansas State fans responding to a story about Avery Johnson that, like, it was a few people, not like a lot of people, that seemed to be like happy that Will Howard was gone. But I actually think by and large, Kansas State fans were quite pleased with what Will Howard did there. But sometimes it's just like time to move on. Like sometimes it's maybe better for both parties to kind of part ways. But it doesn't mean that Will Howard is a bad quarterback. And I think it's reasonable to expect that whatever he's been, he can be better because of the weapons that are going to be around him at Ohio State. But like the stuff about like leading the offense, and I think like imbuing the offense with confidence, I do think that's a thing. Like I don't know that I always picked up on that from Kyle McCord last year, because like he was still trying to figure some stuff out too. I don't know if you can get the entire offense kind of clicking on all cylinders when it's clear that the quarterback is still trying to figure out everything it means to be a quarterback at this level. And that won't be at all the case with Will Howard. He's played a ton of football already. I think he has natural leadership abilities. I think he definitely has some game. There's some areas where he needs to improve, but like when you combine all of that, like I don't think there were times last year where it was like very obvious that Devin Brown's personality was outshining Kyle McCord's in a way that made you think like, can Kyle McCord get this team going? I don't feel that with these two guys. Like I think they're kind of similar. Maybe they're a little different in the way they go about it, but I mean, you guys can tell me if you disagree. But like I do think that like Will Howard kind of has a pretty good feel for how to lead this football team. Well, it'll be different once the season starts, but I'm fairly confident that he'll get that figured out.
I wonder if their similar approach is part of the reason that there was no post-spring or second thoughts from Devin Brown about sticking with Ohio State. Like we've talked about this in the past with how close Cardale Jones and JT Barrett were, on down the line with quarterback battles that never really got like backbiting or contentious between Ohio State quarterbacks. Like if they see things kind of the same way and are both trying to lead in the same way, surely everyone loves having an alpha and a true number one lead dog at quarterback. But if they're both trying to do the same thing and are going about it in similar ways, like I think that can be a benefit for Ohio State. And maybe that's what Devin Brown saw there, like outside of believing in himself and thinking that ultimately he could still win the starting quarterback job for Ohio State. Like those similarities might work in favor of both Ohio State and the quarterback room.
Yeah. I think most Kansas State fans, I certainly am not that familiar with their community, but I would imagine that if Avery Johnson didn't exist, they would have been heartbroken if Will Howard left. But it's 2024, NIL exists. You're going to have to pay a starting quarterback. Like, one of them's from Kansas and a top 75 prospect who's a sophomore. One's from Pennsylvania who's a, top 500 prospect 5 years ago. Like, you have to just ride the modern wave. You have to ride the future in college football. And
well, they couldn't have been all that thrilled, Berm, if they were offering $600,000 to Colorado State's quarterback.
I don't believe that that's true.
Nor do I.
Someone from Colorado State lying? I never. Oh my gosh.
No, I don't even know that they're lying. I'm saying that you live in a world now where some random person who is tangentially affiliated with Kansas State could have made a phone call that had nothing to do with what Kansas State wanted to do or was actually trying to do. But we live in chaos time, and any booster can get a kid's phone number and be like, hey, if you want to transfer, I'll give you $6. Like, you don't know.
Berm, I liked it better when you were saying that Colorado State was lying. You didn't have to like go a different direction with it. I don't want reality.
I need to ride the fence, dude.
Okay.
I cannot have the Colorado State Twitter coming at me.
That's true.
Tens of angry people coming after you.
Yeah, a super passionate fan base of sheep.
Of sheep?
Yeah.
Is that what you call them? The sheep?
We call them the sheep. Yeah. Beat the sheep.
Suck it, sheep. Here's another Will Howard question. This one more on the field related. Avery, not Avery Johnson, I'm assuming, but Avery.
That'd be wild if it was, though.
It could be. You never know. After watching the 2015 Virginia Tech Ohio State opener, first of all, love that you're watching that game. Cardale Jones had several rushes that reminded me a lot of Will Howard's game. How similar do you think Will Howard will look to Cardale? I guess you can include as a thrower in there, but I think the answer is probably not very similar. But as a runner, do you think there's any similarities between what we saw from Cardale then and what we might see from Will Howard this fall?
Size wise, yes, it'll look similar.
Like big dudes running over people, right?
Yeah, maybe stylistically or the way it's deployed in the offense, but not in terms of athleticism. I think Will Howard is a step ahead of where Cardale was, as a spry young man in 2015. So I would say no. I think you're going to see much more athleticism out of Will Howard than people believe that he has.
That was what struck me about, especially the national title run, is that Cardale was more athletic than I think people gave him credit for as well. But that still wasn't like, hey, line up and have some designed quarterback zone or zone read stuff, like, and let him go cook with his legs. Like, it was scrambling stuff. And I think that would probably be the difference, Bill. You correct me if I'm wrong. Like, Cardale's stuff was, and I haven't watched the 2015 Virginia Tech game since the time that it happened, so I can't really speak to all the plays in that, but definitely during the playoff run, it was like stuff that was coming out of structure. And I think that Will Howard is going to have a lot of things that are designed for him. I don't know. What have you seen? When you watched all the film from him at Kansas State, what did you see in terms of the run usage?
I think it could be similar, like to what Berm said, like in terms of just like Will Howard also being a big guy who might be able to run through and over some defenders, but I think types of run will be different. I didn't look at the 2015 Virginia Tech game either, but in 2014, Cardale Jones had more scramble yards in 2014 than Will Howard has in his entire career. So like Will Howard just has not been a guy who's going to like feel pressure, get out of the pocket, run up the middle of the defense, and maybe get a few extra yards by running through somebody. Almost all of his rushing production has been in a designed run game where he looks very comfortable. And I thought Cardale like never really looked quite comfortable. They did try to do it, but like, I don't know how often he made the right read. Sometimes he felt a little kind of stuck in place. But when he got ahead of steam, man, like I wouldn't want to be in front of him. So like, I think that could be similar with Will Howard. But aside from that, I think Will Howard is probably a much more comfortable runner down to down than Cardale Jones probably ever was. And, long term, probably like more effective too, and able to do some more things in the run game. Very comfortable, I think, in the read option game. Clearly, if you watch his Kansas State stuff, so I don't know that it's all that similar aside from their size, which is a weapon.
Yeah, but style-wise, it's closer to JT Barrett in the way he was used than the way Cardale Jones was used.
I think that's probably right. Yeah.
I think you read my mind, Berm, because I was thinking that outside of all the Josh Allen comparisons that have been thrown around, some sort of like combination of Cardale and JT is kind of what I think Will Howard could give Ohio State, and that would be pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, not arm strength wise, obviously. Cardale's.
Well, he's not going to have Cardale's arm strength. He doesn't have it, and few humans walking the earth have ever had it.
That is true. All right, recruiting question. You ready, Berm?
Yes. I don't know, Bill. I don't know why Justin Frye can't land big time offensive line. I'm confident that's what the question is, right? I don't know.
It is the question from Aaron. Yes.
It is hard. It is hard to do. It is a simple matter of numbers are certainly not where they are at other positions. There are not elite Ohio State level offensive linemen all over the country like there are elite cornerbacks or elite wide receivers. There is geography and demographics that are very much skewed against Ohio State winning these battles. There is and I've said this before, and I don't know that it's not something that you can prove, outright, but a lot of these big offensive linemen are mama's boys. They don't like to go away from home. They are the big teddy bear cerebral kids who are wanting to stay close to mom, and then you throw into the fact that there are so few of these guys nationally. NIL for those players is so then elevated. It becomes just a very interesting dynamic, but we're in year 3 of Justin Frye's recruiting. Ohio State in the year 20, in his first year, signed only 3 offensive linemen. They were all from Ohio. I'm sorry, 4. They ended up adding Miles Walker late. So you have Miles Walker, Luke Montgomery, Austin Sareveld, and Josh Padilla, all of them from Ohio. Last year, you have, again, you bring in the Armstrong twins from Ohio. Ian Moore, who is not from Ohio, but he, for some reason, Justin Frye won't get credit for that because he's from Indiana. I guess it's not far enough away. I don't know. He's a top 100 offensive lineman in this cycle right now. The Buckeyes are one of the 2 favorites for the number 1 ranked offensive lineman in the country. If you sign 1 5-star offensive lineman every 3 years from outside of the Ohio State footprint, is that good enough, or does it have to be 1 every year? I don't know what is a success for Ohio State. In my mind, and we've talked about this before, I don't think Ohio State should have to go all over the country to sign elite offensive linemen because there are a lot of them in the Midwest. I think the biggest problem in the last decade of Ohio State offensive line recruiting is that they haven't recruited the Midwest well enough on the offensive line, not nationally. That's my opinion. But it's hard. It's a hard position to recruit.
I mean, I would certainly defer to your expertise on that. I know some people there's a thought that I don't necessarily disagree with, but maybe there's an explanation for and maybe it's just a matter of there being more players. Why can Brian Hartline do what he's done with 5 stars outside of Ohio? Why can James Laurinaitis in his first cycle as a full-time recruiter go get Riley Pettijohn? Yet it's so hard for Ohio State to do the same thing with offensive linemen and has been forever.
It's a fair question, but that's that point you made right there is the important one. It has been forever like that. It is not. I think it's about what offensive linemen are as people versus what other positions are as people, and not everyone is wired exactly the same. But the reality is, you signed Nick Petit-Frere in 2018 out of Florida. That was Urban Meyer and Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano had ties to his high school.
Greg Schiano's kids played high school football with Nick Petit, right?
Right. So you have ties there that open the door. You need to have something to open the door in these recruitments. Donovan Jackson, Ohio State did a great job there, but there's family ties to Ohio. It helps when you have those things. Going further back,
Wyatt Davis,
that was that's an Urban Meyer win. I mean, it is different. Those guys committed to Urban Meyer. But Urban Meyer lost Jackson Carman, who is a 5-star offensive tackle in the state of Ohio. Justin Frye hasn't done that yet, so I don't know why he is so thrown out. And I think it's actually a matter of comparison because the other coaches, Tim Walton, James Laurinaitis, Brian Hartline, etc., are doing so well that I think someone has to be the slowest swimmer. I don't want to sit here and kiss Justin Frye's butt. I will say, though, I think he definitely needs to expand his net. I think he should be offering a lot more players. He has offered, even at this point, 30 offensive linemen in the class of 2025. Georgia, Alabama, et cetera, have offered like more than 50. Like, there's no reason to be so picky because in some instances you just have to get a foot in the door, and they have been slow to do that. That's a valuable and real critique, I think. But as far as the execution goes, like you will not find an offensive lineman or family member of an offensive lineman or high school coaches of an offensive lineman that will tell you that Justin Frye is not trying, or that Justin Frye is not extremely likable, that he is very involved. He's probably just not involved with enough kids. And that is right now, I think, the downfall. And maybe he's not assertive enough in the fact like, hey, we need you. It's time for you to commit, get in the boat. Ohio State likes to give kids the opportunity to explore and say, hey, come back to us and let us know if this is what you want. And a lot of these offensive linemen are, again, they are big kids who are easily influenced. Like Henry Fanuku is one guy in the class of 2025 that I think, heading into June, we had circled as, hey, this guy could commit to Ohio State if they push. And they didn't. And the next week, Missouri did. And Missouri ended up landing him because they were like, hey, we need you right now. And I mean, I think that's a philosophy issue for Justin Frye. It's not an effort issue for Justin Frye at all. And I that's where I get like annoyed with people saying that, oh, he sucks. He sucks. He doesn't. He maybe just needs to change a touch of the philosophy here or there. But who he is, how he's recruiting these kids, the relationships he's building are very real and very good. It's just maybe not enough of them.
It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition where, Berm, you're talking about kids staying home and this emphasis and success that Justin Frye's had within the state of Ohio. And like, we're looking at potentially a starting 5 on Ohio State's offensive line, and none of them are from Ohio.
Yeah. But that's because this is not Justin Frye's offensive line.
Yeah. All right. That's true.
And, these are all guys that were recruited before when, Greg Studrara was letting Blake Miller leave Ohio and letting Jackson Carman leave Ohio. Like there's definitely, this is not a Justin Frye specific issue. This is an Ohio State offensive line specific issue. And I don't know why they still seem to get very little credit for developing offensive linemen or putting them into the NFL, and that gets held against them. But I do understand people thinking that he's not doing enough. And I agree that there's not enough results. I know how much effort is going into it. But maybe it's a tweak of approach and expanding the board and maybe just getting more aggressive, because Justin is a very laid back guy, and maybe that doesn't work in 2024.
Speaking of tweaks to approaching things, here's a question from Josiah. Maybe you guys have already answered this question or a version of it, but I'm wondering if you notice any differences so far to Ryan Day's vibe this offseason compared to prior years, with key offseason changes to the staff, roster, etc., and Day taking on more of a CEO role. Does it feel like business as usual with him, or does it feel different at all, or perhaps it's too early to tell?
Feels quite different to me. And I had a conversation with some people around the coaches outing, and I asked their thoughts about like being around him and what he's been like for the last 6 or 7 months, some of those changes. It's like, well, the competitiveness is the same, but it's being managed in a slightly different way. And to me, it harkens all the way back to when Ryan Day first took over. And I'll never forget it. I was working on a story, and like he was standing at the whiteboard for that, Thursday night social, having some beverages himself while talking to these high school coaches for hours. And somebody on the staff, I was like, well, he doesn't do that anymore. And they joked, well, he's like, well, he makes $10 million now, so he's got a little bit more responsibility. He probably can't do that. But I think this version of Ryan Day is closer to that version of Ryan Day that wants to be, like, that's always been his personality. Berm has talked about this a number of times as well. I know that for sure, that he he's a loyal person. He is an engaging person. He wants to have a good time, And he, I think, got lost a little bit in the midst of the losses to Michigan and the changing landscape of rules and managing the roster and all those things. And finally taking this step towards being the CEO and giving up the play calling, I think has freed up a part of his personality to return. It was under there. It was masked by a lot of dark clouds for the last couple of years, but I think that those are parting. Now, he still has to beat Michigan. We're not going to pretend otherwise. He needs to go make a run in the college football playoff. This is that time, and that's the point of his career. Those dark clouds would come back in a hurry in late November. But I think that he's much better equipped to handle and deal with that pressure in a way that he used to than he has over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a few times over the last few months, but the difference that I see in Ryan Day is that he is a guy who just inherently does not trust people very well. And I don't, I'm sure we can psychoanalyze him back to when he was a child for reasons that's the case. But that's not our job. But one of the few people that he trusts implicitly in the entire world is Chip Kelly. And I think the opportunity of having Chip Kelly in that building and being able to have him be there has changed Ryan Day's entire approach. And he knows that he doesn't have to do all of the other little things that he used to have to do that were getting in the way of this like different personality being present and available, because Chip Kelly can handle those things and he knows that he can trust the way it's going to get done. And I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I think like clearly what's on his plate is different because he's kind of more out there. So like from a logistical standpoint, like there are a lot of things I think most people can notice are different, but he does seem to have like a pretty good grasp of like what is needed of him now. And I know that like he seemed to have struggled with that for the last few years. And I think he would have gotten to this point eventually, even if it were Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator. But I think to your point, Berm, like having that incredibly familiar relationship with Chip Kelly just expedited that process. Like I just think he's much farther down that road than he would have been otherwise, which whether or not that's good or bad for Ohio State in terms of like results on the field, like I don't know. It would be my preference. Like I think it's right for him to be more of a CEO than to try to be the offensive coordinator and the CEO. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll be proven wrong but on that in the long run. But I think it's the right course of action. I think clearly he thinks it is and has been thinking about it for a while and has finally done it. But I think the vibes around him are different. It does feel more to me, Austin, like when he first got the job and like was a little looser. Like you have to act very differently when you're a head coach compared to like an assistant coach, which is understandable. But I think like after that first year, after you like kind of realized, maybe he realized like, oh, like we got so close to like playing for a national championship, and then it did play for a national championship in 2020. Maybe the weight of all of it like kind of made him feel like he had to sort of like change who he was a little bit. And now it kind of feels like he's his normal self more or less. So I do think that's a good thing.
Tell me what you guys think about this. So if 2019, like Ryan Day gets this job 1 year prior, 2 years prior, there's no person in the world saying this guy is going to be the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like he's
there was coaching. At least one person.
Okay. Not when he was, okay. How about 3 years when he's coaching quarterbacks in San Francisco?
Okay. Definitely not. At that point, definitely not.
Okay. Then you were quickly won over by his work as the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, but let's set that aside. That was his first full-time job. There has to have been some part of him that's like, he wasn't making $10 million then. It wasn't something where like every program in the country was trying to hire him as a head coach. Like I could wonder if maybe he felt like he was playing with house money. Like he's got this opportunity and just going to go for broke and be reckless, like reckless or aggressive, however you want to put it. Like the shots that he took late in the Fiesta Bowl, most coordinators don't dial those up. I wonder if like then he got into the job, lost a couple games to Michigan, and like the aggressive, like I got to protect what I have now, and now he's in a spot where it's like, all right, it's this is it. This is 1 year. Got to go put the pedal back to the metal. Like if he can rediscover some of that aggressiveness, because there's nothing to lose. Like you have one opportunity to do it and go back to what worked for you in the first place.
Yes, I agree with all that.
Okay.
I also want to say it's not just Chip Kelly that he like. he's now got a body of work with guys like Tim Walton, who he's become extremely close with and who he trusts, again, in a way that I don't think he had that sort of relationship with Jim Knowles. He's now entering year 3 with him. Hartline is a guy that he could have taken a step back after last year and the way the offensive coordinator thing went. He didn't, that didn't happen. Keenan Bailey, who he has been around since the minute Ryan Day walked into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center the first time, like this entire coaching staff feels much more cohesive than it has in any of the years that he's been the head coach. And so I think that that's also playing a part. But again, that is all under the umbrella of Chip Kelly's there, and he can delegate a lot of what he had to do to Chip and know that it's going to be done his way, as opposed to like somebody freelancing or doing whatever. So there's many reasons I think why we can all think he's got a different vibe, but I think they're all appropriate and accurate.
We're going to do one more question. We do have time for that.
Sure, we have time for whatever.
All right. This is from Jeffy. My name is Jeff. It's possible that I added. It's possible that I added a Y on the name, so I apologize if I did that.
I'm Jeff.
This is in reference to a conversation we're having the other day when we were talking about the video game stuff. It's not a video game question though, so anyone who's getting ready to, So it's the question is, you all said on that show that Sonny Styles would be the starting will linebacker. How much then do you think CJ Hicks will play? Is he a transfer waiting to happen, or will he wait for Cody Simon to move on? I don't think CJ Hicks is a transfer waiting to happen.
I was going to say, I don't think CJ Hicks is a transfer waiting to happen, or else he already would have, right? Let's be honest about that. If Ohio State wasn't, telling him and also supporting him, however that looks, from a coaching side and an NIL side, CJ Hicks would be gone already. I don't think he has any desire to leave. You don't become named Captain Buckeye as a recruit for no reason. I think he desperately wants to make it work. I think he had a very good spring. I think that some of the positional stuff for CJ Hicks just doesn't suit his skill set to the best ability at linebacker. I think when we've had the conversation about the Jack position, like that's where he needs to play before you have a Baron Browning situation. I think that CJ Hicks has that kind of athletic ceiling similar to Baron Browning at the next level. So that's not to dismiss him from a position battle in August. That's not to write off his future. It's pretty, you can see a path forward when Cody Simon is gone and potentially Sonny Styles being gone after next year as well, where I don't think CJ Hicks ever envisioned it was going to take till year 4, but it might, and everyone's path is different, right? We hear that a lot in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I don't think he's a transfer waiting to happen. I don't think that the first 2 years have worked out the way that anyone would have projected when he signed with Ohio State. But I also don't think right now that he is in a spot that would allow him to actually be a starter for Ohio State on day one.
I also think that the expectation, the projection of what you just said there, Austin, is it didn't work out the way anyone thought. Like, I don't know why anyone would have thought it would have been different. This is a kid playing basically, Division VII football in Ohio, who was a do everything guy on the team for Archbishop Alter. Like, he was not a player that was playing at Cincinnati Moeller and like had a lot of the other things checked off the list. Like, there is a development curve, especially when you're coming from lower level football in Ohio. And, I think most players, especially when they're 5-star rated players, they come into the school with very high expectations for themselves. And they quickly realize that there is a lot of work that needs to be done to get to where they thought that they would be. And a lot of times I believe that because of the recruiting expectations, because of social media, because of the fan expectations, it takes a minute for the player's understanding of his current situation to match the coach's expectation for where he is developmental wise. And I think we've hit that point probably with CJ. And I would be shocked if he doesn't play 300 snaps this year. I think he'll play a lot. But he is probably less demanding of playing time / put me on the field than the fan base is for him. And that, I think, is the problem. Like, I think he gets where he is more than the fans do. And there's not, he wants to play, but he's also not naive to the fact that he's got work to do still. And he's gotten a lot better.
He has gotten a lot better. He's going to play in the fall. Like, I think Sonny Styles will play more than him. I think Sonny Styles will be the starting will linebacker when the Akron game rolls around. But like, CJ was the starter, it seemed like, throughout much of spring. Right? It always seemed like Sonny Styles was kind of with the twos. Now, I do think eventually Sonny will probably show himself to be a more reliable kind of every down will linebacker, and CJ's role could be a little more specialized to passing situations. But I think that could be great for CJ. Like, CJ could play 300 snaps this year and end up maybe being the guy who has the best chance of like approaching double-digit sacks for this defense, because he's really good at blitzing. Like, he's really good, I think, up on the line of scrimmage. And I just don't know that his skill set lends itself to being like an in-the-box linebacker all the time, which is totally fine. Like, Austin, you said, like, that makes him Baron Browning. Ohio State misused Baron Browning. I don't know that they're going to misuse CJ Hicks. I hope that they don't. I'm not super fearful of him kind of like getting lost in the way that Baron Browning did. And I also believe that James Laurinaitis is not going to be as like static with his personnel decisions as Jim Knowles was that first year, and seemed to be a little bit last year, even still with Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. So I think like last year, Tommy and Steele both played like 600-ish snaps, and Cody Simon played 300. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a similar breakdown this fall with CJ Hicks being the guy who gets like the between 300 and 400 snaps. And
the crazy thing is, Cody had like 450 snaps in 2021, and then like 200 some in 2022, and then 300 some last year. Like, he's gotten better along the way, and CJ is going to play. He's going to play a lot. We just don't think he's going to be the every down guy. Was that your first BP for the season, Bill? Like, that CJ Hicks is going to have double-digit sacks?
He said approaching.
I'll make my BP that CJ Hicks will have the most sacks on the defense.
Oh my! Oh, okay. Yeah, that's putting the spice in the pepper.
We saw that spring practice, man, where he was just like in the backfield before the ball was.
That was crazy.
He can be LeVar Arrington. He can be a LeVar Arrington type of player. You just have to be willing to play. And I think this is actually a benefit maybe for this season for him, because Ohio State's rest of their defense should be so good and so experienced that you can get away with being 10 on 11 in a lot of cases if you just send him after the quarterback every single time.
Well, it doesn't take him long to get there. We saw that up close and personal. That's I don't remember. Was that Student Appreciation Day, Bill? We were standing back there, and we like they're sending CJ. They're sending CJ every single time. Sending Sonny Styles. Like, are they really going to do this? Because that's pretty terrifying. Like, how are you going to account for that?
I think it was Student Appreciation Day, and then like they let Arvell Reese get in there a little bit and do some stuff. Like
one time.
Why can't if you have two guys in Cody Simon and like Sonny Styles is different, because I think Sonny Styles is like kind of both like the solid fundamental, just like let him put in the box and he won't make mistakes kind of guy, and also the freak that you want to just like let loose. But if you have Cody Simon and Sonny, and if you're really good like with that starting tandem, why not let CJ and Arvell just like go nuts, man? Like you have the freedom to do that this fall. So like I understand that Ohio State has not always embraced that idea, but I don't know, maybe naively so. I hope that they do this fall.
You have freedom and you have flexibility, because the one thing we've talked about all along is like, if you do that, then you have to take Jordan Hancock off the field. But because Sonny Styles is so different athletically, he can cover the flat. He can do a lot of the things in most of the schedule Ohio State plays. Sonny Styles is going to be much, if not more athletic than the slot receiver he's lined up against. He's going to be as athletic. And so you can do those things and put CJ on the field with Sonny Styles or Arvell and Sonny and CJ all at once. Oh, I can't wait.
You can also do this. I think this is not against the rules. You can take a defensive lineman off the field.
I was just going to say that's the bigger, that's the $1 million question,
guys. Like, this is not freaky. This is not Freaky Friday. This is not Imagination Monday. Okay, it's Mailbag Monday. If you want to do that, you need to pre-order NCAA 2025, which is released today, Monday at 4 p.m. if you have the pre-order. and then align it however you want. But we're not just creating out of whole cloth scenarios that are never going to happen.
A girl can dream.
Shouldn't it happen? Come on.
Shouldn't it though?
Can't we all agree on that?
Yeah.
What
that
we
actually
agree
like
on,
halfway addresses another question that was asked by Kurt. I'll just throw it out there since we're kind of talking about it. About what he said, like what's going on with the disconnect between Larry Johnson and the rest of the defense. And like this is it. This is the entire conversation.
That's where the disconnect is. I mean, my understanding is that like with the jack, that and if Larry wants to correct this record when we get to August, he can. But that anyone who's going to be rushing the passer and playing in the front, he wants them to be in his room. I think Berm, that may have come up in the Justin Hill recruitment, and like I know that was happening with Baron Browning because we'd see him take reps with the rushman before the game. It's like, oh, this is a game where he's going to be allowed to do that, and then he would like have a sack or 2 tackles for loss, but then not do that again the next week. Like I may be slightly exaggerating some of the details, but I think like that is the disconnect. Is like if there's going to be someone who is rushing the passer, Larry Johnson wants to coach them on that technique full time, and Ohio State would still very much like a Baron Browning or CJ Hicks to be cross-trained because they might be more important at linebacker down the road at some point. But I think that's where they're just, I don't know that they've mended that bridge, but that's the one that I think has been the toughest to cross.
When someone has done something their way for 40 plus years, it's hard to move people off of an opinion. And in college football, when you have a coaching staff of 11 people, you should be able to compromise. And I'm not sure that there's compromise there.
Can we, does Arvell Reese then have a chance to break through since he was on the D line last year and now he's a linebacker? Does he have like,
well, he did both last year.
Does he have these? Is he a citizen of Larry Land and the linebacker room? Can he do both?
I don't know the answer, Bill. I really don't. I mean,
Jamestown and Larry Land.
Jamestown and Larry.
Oh wait, maybe Jamestown's wrong. Well, I've been drinking the Kool-Aid on Arvell Reese for so long. But I know that's Jonestown. I'm just kidding. Come on,
you did.
Come on. Anyway, we got Roosters coming today, and as soon as I get home this afternoon, NCAA 25 ready to go.
It's a Mailbag Monday that felt a lot like a Freaky Friday. Thanks for kicking off your week with us, and thanks for all the questions. We still didn't get to all of them, but we appreciate everybody taking the time and actually caring how we might answer the questions that are on your mind. This is the Monday edition of the Podcast Daily. Roosters will be later. We've got state of the position on defense coming the rest of the week with Bill's thoughts on that stuff as we wrap up and start building towards Big Ten Media Days, which are a week from tomorrow. Tomorrow being Tuesday. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.